Welcome to this edition of Real World Business Law, where we talk about real-world issues impacting businesses and executives. I'm Declan Leonard. I'm the managing partner here at Berenzweig Leonard.
And I'm Drew Smith, Senior Associate at Berenzweig Leonard.
Drew, great to be here with you. It looks like you're rocking the tuxedo jacket today for this. I mean, that's impressive on the Valentine's Day weekend here.
Well, I had the red one. I should have worn the red one, which is very close to this, but I went with the blue because I think it shows up better on camera.
Yeah, red would have been interesting. Hey, so we got a great topic here today. Esports. Drew, when I first met you, probably about 7-8 years ago, you came in and you were kind of like a junior Jerry Maguire. You were like a real life Jerry Maguire. Used to be an NFL agent, right?
Still am an NFL agent.
Still am, yes, in your off time.
In my off time, that's right. My limited off time that I have.
Yeah, the Washington Post had a great article about you back in the day, all about your NFL agent days.
Yeah, the exploits. That was almost a decade ago.
It was a while ago. Yeah, it was impressive. As a whole world I didn't know about. But anyways, so now we're going to the other side of this, esports. What is esports? I keep hearing about esports all the time, and being a technophobe, I never even know what we're talking about. So what is esports?
So esports is kind of a general term for a platform, which is the video game. Some people think that video games themselves are the sport, similar to, you'd have baseball, basketball, football, and video games.
Yeah.
But it's actually, think of video games more as that's just the vehicle for getting to what the sports are, which are those individual games. So the sports, for all intents and purposes, it would be like the Fortnite, the Super Smash Brothers, Street Fighter. All of those types of games would actually be the sports that you would participate in. So, unless you're in traditional sports, unless you're Bo Jackson or Danny Ainge, or I guess to harken back to your time frame, Chuck Connors, the rifleman.
Oh, for God's sakes, I'm not that much older than you. Come on now.
So I think that was the 50s, right? So that would have been, you would have been a young man at that point in time. But, besides those guys who played two sports.
Yeah.
Professional athletes stick to one sport, and that's similar to what you have in e-gaming. These e-athletes, they're focused on a Fortnite, on Super Smash Bros. They've got that one game that they play, and they become very good at it.
So video games is now a sport. So we've been bitching and moaning with our kids. They're downstairs playing video games, and we're saying go outside and play sports. They've been playing sports the whole time.
They have been playing sports the whole time, and it turns out
wrong.
It turns out that this can be very lucrative as well.
They can make more money doing what they've been doing. I mean, they showed us up once again. This generation shows us up. So how do they? Why is it so popular? How do they make money? I don't get it.
I think this is it was something that even pre-pandemic, if you can remember that time, the esports were growing, and you heard a lot about this professional athlete guy. Shaquille O'Neal was a guy that invested early. Magic Johnson, Michael Jordan, all these guys. You have Robert Kraft, the owner of the Patriots, Jerry Jones, the owner. All of these guys were getting involved in esports teams and making the investment. And so you saw, I think that it was right around 2019 where they said this is $1 billion industry. With the pandemic, this is one of those businesses that was tailor-made for this type of thing. Why? Because you have access to be able to play on your video game console where you're playing with other people from all over the world. You don't have to leave your house. And the streaming through Twitch, you will have broadcasting. I mean, I think, from some of the broadcasts, it seemed like these traditional sports channels, it was cornhole and video games.
Yeah.
And so it has grown exponentially, especially
I know cornhole. Yeah.
Especially during, and actually there's a video game cornhole as well.
How lazy have we gotten that we can't even stand and drink a beer and throw a beanbag? Now we have to do it on our couch.
You do it virtually, and it has grown so much by leaps and bounds. And you're seeing bigger prizes. You're seeing more influencers in that realm. It's definitely a growing industry.
I used to kill it on Wii bowling. I was the master of that. I could spin that thing like no other. So the executives and the players of traditional sports, the NFL, you mentioned Robert Kraft, all of those sports people, rather than be threatened by esports, they've kind of embraced it. Well, of course, they ran to the money, but they've kind of embraced it, right? I mean, it sounds like that's what they've done.
I mean, I think that's what's going on right now. You see some of these professional sports leagues. I mean, you see a lot of their players and players associations that are hosting these types of formats. There's a lot of kind of traditional businesses. I actually just read on BBC News, I think it was yesterday, that there's a lot of movie theaters that are now renting out their theaters to gamers.
Oh, nice.
For $75, $100 an hour, so they can go in and they can play video games. But this is something that I think owners in a professional setting would be wise to take a look at, because if you own, FedEx Field, well, you can fill that for, the football season, but what do you do afterward? And if you could have a video game league, an e-gaming, tournament, those types of things are tailor-made for this.
So Ted Leon's is right here in our backyard. Ted Leon's is Monumental Sports. I think he's big involved in that, right?
Well, I mean, he's a really forward-thinking guy, and he's a guy who made a very early investment in esports. And it continues to grow by leaps and bounds. And I think that a lot of these guys are hedging their bets on a new generation, maybe not as interested in professional sports as when we were kids. And this is a new wave.
So you, for our firm here at Berenzweig, Leonard, you've been working with clients on issues related to esports, representing people who are in the industry. What does that entail? Like, what kind of things do they have to worry about, like from a legal standpoint in the esports industry?
So we've done some stuff for players, so esports players, and also esports leagues. And so the view of that is a little bit different, or how you would kind of approach that. And so I think, if you're an esports league, some of the things that you have to be concerned about is, okay, well, what exactly are you looking for? Are you looking for exclusivity when it comes to your players? It's interesting right now because you don't have a governing body. You don't have an NFL, an NBA.
So it's like the wild, wild west in sports. So
it is. And so a lot of these leagues, they get to kind of create what they want, and maybe that means that these are just one-off tournaments. Maybe it means that it's gaming leagues. Sometimes, I kind of compare it to like an AAU team, where they're going to bring together their best players, and they're going to go around and they're going to play other leagues from around the U.S., around the world. And so those needs are a little bit different than what you have with a player.
So contracts become that much more important in esports. I know in your days, you're still doing this, but NFL agent days, the unions have largely negotiated the contracts. So there's a lot less discretion, a lot less variables that go into a traditional sports player, such as somebody in the NFL. With esports, there's no such sort of consistency. So they really need legal advice when it comes to negotiating these contracts, correct?
I mean, it's not just even the negotiation, it's, actually putting these documents together for teams or for leagues, or looking at them over for players, because there's a lot of pitfalls. And when you look, if you're a player and you have a big platform, you have a lot of followers on Twitch, and you don't want to give up that revenue to the team. If you're a team, you also want to be very careful not to treat your 1099s as employees. As in the employment realm, there's been a lot of changes to those laws. In Virginia, the DOL, has just given their
big time
guidance, and you have to be very careful to not treat these players like employees. You can't tell them they have to, practice every day for 5 hours. They have to, you can't control every aspect of their day. And that's what some of these e-leagues, have been doing. And
so they're being forced to sort of grow up a little bit and face many of the same legal, issues that traditional businesses have had to face.
Sure. And I mean, it's stuff that you wouldn't even think about. It's stuff that when you think of like traditional sports law, or you even entertainment law, it's kind of a merging of those two industries, and to where now you might have issues when it comes to immigration, when you're trying to bring in some of these top players from, South Korea. You also have issues when it comes to real estate. I mean, you have questions about zoning, questions, stuff that would not pop up in kind of a traditional sports world. So there's a lot of things, and one of the big things has been intellectual property. And if you're a sports league, if you're a team or an esports team or league, thinking about the intellectual property, because when you think about kids going out and playing baseball, you don't have to get a license to play baseball. You have to get a license to play these video games. And when you start to stream And when you start to broadcast and you have tournaments,
Yes.
you have signage of all these things, you have to understand what your user agreement is with that video game. And do you have to get a license with that video game? Most of the time, the answer is yes.
Yeah, many, many layers that businesses who operate in the esports industry, they've got to be thinking about this. They've got to get legal help. So it's already a billion-dollar industry. Where do you see esports going? Like, what does esports look like? Does it die down in the next 10, 20 years, or do you think it keeps going?
I don't think that it dies down, but I do think that there has to be some merging within the industry itself. And I don't know if that means that designers like Blizzard, are they going to have their own leagues to where they then become the equivalent of like the NBA or the NHL, to where then they can put together guidance and they can have the rules and the regulations where you start to have kind of a more traditional league setting. To be honest with you, I don't know if those who are involved in esports and those e-athletes, I don't know if they're interested in that type of traditional sports universe as what you have with other professional sports. Right now it is the Wild West, and everyone's kind of trying to grab a piece and kind of seeing where it goes. I certainly don't think that this is dying out. I think that we're only going to see more and more of this, especially as this generation of kids gets older.
Yeah.
They have the opportunity to then kind of possibly take on their own e-teams and kind of take it in their own direction. They have money, they can invest it as well. It's going to be very interesting. This is not going away. The question is, how is it all going to be controlled? How is it going to be regulated?
Yeah.
And so that's kind of where the interesting questions come from.
So now you look at your son and you think, should he do his English or math homework, or should we let him have another hour on the console?
I know we were talking about this a little bit earlier. I'm a bit embarrassed to say that when my now 10-year-old son, when he was 6 or 7, I introduced him to the Wii, the original Wii, and Super Smash Brothers, and it was fun to just destroy him. And he would get.
You are very competitive, no doubt about it, as we all know by our Halloween door decorating contest here at the firm.
Slightly competitive, and it was fun. And now, and I will never let him view this, but he is much better than me, and I cannot beat him anymore. And there are moments where I say, "Hey, you got to do your homework. You got to go." And then I look and I say, "You're pretty good at this. Is this something
Todd,
where you?"
Let's isolate this video. We're gonna send this to the family and let them know.
I still think I'm better at Fortnite than him, but I might get some pushback on that as well.
So this whole time back in the day when I was the master, I literally was a master of Pac-Man. There was a time I seem to recall that they called it a pattern, right? So you could learn the pattern to Pac-Man and like you could beat the computer. Had I just stuck with this, all this blood, sweat, and tears and nonsense going to law school, I could have just had such a more direct route to success. I blew it, is basically what I'm coming to terms with here. Todd, stop laughing at me here.
Well, I think what you're saying is you want to start a Berenzweig Leonard esports team for Pac-Man.
Yes. Pac-Man or Asteroids. Asteroids was another great one, man. The graphics were phenomenal there. We used to play it at a CVS up the street in Williamsburg Shopping Center, and we would just kill for that thing. That was awesome.
See, I was the one generation removed where our big one, we had Street Fighter 2, which was the game of choice, and then we had some of those the fun 4-player arcade, which was like the Simpsons, the X-Men. But I always look back, and there was a Michael Jackson video game where Michael Jackson. The premise was that there were children that were stolen, and you had to go and rescue these children.
Yeah, that's so much more disturbing even just listening to this.
It was a
right
bizarre
now, knowing
concept.
now what we know. Oh my God. Well, listen, I'm not sure how we cannot end on that one.
That's right.
Great discussion, Drew. It sounds like esports is an industry that is only going to grow. It's great that you've gotten involved in it and that we represent clients in it. And thank you, everyone, for joining us for this edition of Real World Business Law.
Thank you.